Welcome to the 9642 podcast. This is your host, Mr. Number 9.
And this is The Fool.
Your 96 best place to listen to...
For 10 years.
Yes, for our 10th season of our mostly up-to-date...
And unqualified. And unrequested.
Ramblings of the various issues in the world of sport.
Or something like that.
Hello everyone, we are here to talk about America's game, the great pigskin, what we in New Zealand lovingly call gridiron, the NFL. Though we technically call the CFL gridiron too. Not that I've ever met a CFL fan in my life.
No.
In New Zealand. Even in Canada for that matter. Actually, no, to be fair, I knew one or two CFL fans in Canada. But
not even sure if the CFL is shown in New Zealand TV. Maybe.
Yeah.
I can't remember seeing any, so...
I have seen games of CFL, but only in the States. So that should tell you all you need to know.
Yeah.
So currently, as you know, with the NFL, we are in the business end. We're about to hit their version of Christmas in December.
Mm-hmm.
So in the two, we have the mighty powerful AFC, American Football Conference, and we have the less powerful NFC, the National Football Conference. The AFC playoff picture is a mess, so we will go to that a bit later because it's not. So in the NFC, we've the four conferences, and the NFC East looks the strongest. Currently, we have the Cowboys on top with 10-3.
Mm-hmm.
They have a head-to-head advantage over the Philadelphia Eagles, who are 10-3. Now, it's a bit of a thing. I think these two teams are probably going to make the playoffs, almost certainly. I don't know who's going to top that NFC East. But the Eagles have been were the team to beat this year until they lost, I think, 3 of their last 5 games. So I think they started off with a 9-game winning streak in this season. So they were really, really good. They currently have a they're both towering over their division. The New York Giants, weirdly, they've won their last 3 games, and they've won 5 out of their last, I want to say last 5 out of their last 6 or something ridiculous.
All right, yeah.
They're 5-8, so they've got a losing record. They had just last season, they made the playoffs. They got there with Daniel Jones, who is the best quarterback, but he was serviceable, and they paid him. They gave him a nice contract. It's not the top of the line contract, but it's not a cheap contract. And then he got injured, I believe 3 or 4 games in, and they hadn't looked good anyway at that point. And they hadn't won a single game. And then lots of people would think now that next season's draft, currently in the college game, there's 2 really good QB prospects, most likely going to go 1 and 2 in the draft. And there is a third player named Marvin Harrison, who everybody's saying is better than Jamar Chase.
All right.
So any team that's got a good QB who maybe was injured or something like that, and they want to get someone in to be like a powerhouse receiver, they've got a powerhouse receiver in there. So there's 3 really good players in the draft. The New York Giants, everybody thought they were initially what they call tanking for Caleb Williams, who is the QB of USC, University South California, where he won the Heisman Trophy last year, so he was the best player in college last year. Good chance he'll win it again this year. Currently, like I said, Giants are 5-8, but they've won all their last 5 games with a backup QB because Daniel Jones got injured. They played a bunch of different people, and then they got Tommy DeVito to start, I think about 6 or 7 games ago. It's really interesting. He's a 22-year-old QB. He got drafted 3 years ago, never played a game. Yeah. He still lives with his parents in Staten Island. a very Italian American family.
All right.
Everybody adores him. He's been playing pretty good. So the Giants actually have two really good QBs.
Oh, that's cool.
Two reasonable QBs. One injured, though they might be able to trade away Daniel Jones if they decide to stay with Tommy DeVito, or if they decide to trade Tommy DeVito, they might get some draft assets for him. But they might be happy to get a nice big wide receiver for whoever their QB is next season.
Yeah.
So you never know. But they're not in the contention for a good draft pick. So I'm not sure what they're doing. But the NFC is so weak. The Giants, with a 5-8 record, are in the playoff picture. That's how bad the NFC is at the moment.
Yeah.
Now, the top of the NFC is the San Francisco 49ers in the NFC West. One of the things about, even though the NFC is the weaker division, the 49ers might be the best team in the league.
Wow.
So they have the Mr. Irrelevant from last year's draft. Mr. Irrelevant being the last player drafted in the draft in the 7th round. Brock Purdy, who absolutely had an incredible season last season, and while he started slow this season, he's been MVP level form this season so far as well. So the 49ers are not paying top dollar to a quarterback because they've got a very young QB, and they have a stacked team of like offensive and defensive talent all around him.
Yeah.
The 49ers system doesn't really rely on having a super good QB. The coach is really, really good, and they have really, really good players around him. And their QB is pretty good, too. I rate Brock Purdy. He's Joe Burrow without the arm talent. But because he doesn't have the arm talent, he's more careful and considered a player.
Yeah.
Because Joe Burrow's biggest thing is not his speed or arm talent or any of that, or it's the fact that he never seems to lose his poise.
Yeah.
And
the big thing.
That's the same thing. Brock Purdy is very similar. Obviously, not as talented as Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow scored 60 thrown touchdowns in a college season, maybe the best college season ever, and took his team to the Super Bowl. So. We're not. It's early doors to compare him to someone like Joe. So the 49ers are really good. The rest of the NFC, the next two teams in the NFC West, 6 and 7, once again losing records, they are in the playoff picture. The Rams, under Sean McVay, have slowly started coming back. Matt Stafford is showing form. They've got Cooper Kupp, and who the person Rich Eisen likes to affectionately call Samoan Cup, Nika Makua, who basically has been getting monster numbers as well, and he's another 7th round draft pick. Everybody said that the Rams basically threw away all their picks because they threw away a lot of high round draft picks to get a good team, because their attitude was fuck the picks, we want a good team.
Yeah.
And they won the Super Bowl with Stafford, so it's probably worth it, but everybody thought, it'll take like 2 or 3 seasons to rebuild. Last season, and then basically everyone they've drafted with really low draft picks, people from the 5th, 6th, and 7th round, are all starting for them and having monster numbers. That just shows, A, Sean McVay is really good, a coach, B, and he knows how to coach people up, also in-game coach.
Yeah.
B, obviously their scouting is incredible. They're just finding talent everywhere, and they're not paying them much because they're drafted really low. Unfortunately for the Seahawks, have Geno Smith still, who was last year's comeback player of the year, famously telling everyone that they had written him off, but he didn't write them back. He has. They've been a good team as well. They've slowly petered out a bit, but the NFC is such a weak division. You can't necessarily expect them not to make it through. So those two teams are still in the play. I think every team in the NFC who has potentially 6 wins could get a wild card slot. But in this one, I think 49ers are definitely going through. The NFC North, the oldest division in the league. The Detroit Lions, long time has also rans and laughing stocks. The only team to have gone 2 seasons in a row without winning a game. Ouch.
Ouch.
They are 10-4. They've played They've beat the Kansas City Chiefs at the first game of the season.
Yeah.
Everybody was hyped, and then they kept up with the hype a bit, but then they've slowly been shown that maybe they're a year or two away from being a real contender. They will make the playoffs, I think, 100%. But I don't think they're gonna win a game in the playoffs. They're not going to be at one of the top 2 seed. Only the top seed gets a bye. The Lions are not going to be the top seed. It'll be one of the 3 of the Cowboys, Eagles, or 49ers that get the top seeds. Even though I think the 49ers are the best team, the 49ers, pretty tough schedule coming up. We'll get to them when we talk to the NFC, talk about AFC teams. The Vikings are 7-7. Ridiculously losing 2 QBs. They lost Kirk Cousins was playing incredible and he got injured, and then they got Arizona's then QB starter who was kind of just there to Arizona Cardinals have Kyler Murray as a QB, but he was injured, so they had a different starter who actually got them a bunch of wins, and he was playing really well. Then he got taken by the Vikings, where he balled out. He literally came into the team. He was apparently on the day of the game, he was asking people he was going to throw to what their names were.
Oh.
And then he balled out, and then he got injured again, and now they're on their 3rd QB. So it's hard to tell what's going to happen with the Vikings.
Yeah.
The Packers started off slowly after obviously nearly 15 years of Aaron Rodgers at the helm, future Hall of Famer, and before them they had Brett Favre for 15 odd years, another Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
So they didn't. So what we know is that Jordan Love, who is their current QB, is probably a Hall of Famer, and he's kind of playing like he might be a future Hall of Famer. Very athletic QB. Very exciting team, the Packers, 6-7. They might sneak into the playoffs because everybody else is so bad.
Yeah.
And in their division, there is the 5-8 Bears. At one point, the Bears looked like they were going to be the worst team in the league, but they've slowly come back and gotten a few wins. So we'll see what happens with them in the draft. But once again, I don't think the Bears are making the playoffs. Obviously, the Cardinals are not. Neither are. But I think the Bears of the bottom teams in all the divisions have probably the best chance to potentially sneak in a place at the playoffs.
Well, yeah.
They've had a bunch of players come back from injury. You never know. But it would be the lower. It would be a very, very. It's very, very unlikely, but it's definitely still mathematically possible. Next, the weakest division in the whole league is the NFC South, with currently the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who was another team that has lost a Hall of Fame QB in Tom Brady, who retired at the end of last season. Got Baker Mayfield, who's kind of balling a bit, but they're not a good team, and they're not coached very well. Currently 6-7, along with the Falcons and the Saints. All 3 teams in the NFC South are 6-7.
Yeah.
I don't think the NFC South are going to have 2 teams. I know I said that every team with 6 wins has a chance in the NFC, and you can see why. Like, there is no good team other than the top teams that are really balling out, right? So other than obviously the NFC East, where there's Cowboys and Eagles, who are both really good.
Yeah. There's only 4 teams that look certain to make it. So. Yeah.
Whereas the NFC South, any of those top 3 teams could make it through. I think the Bucks are basically have the strongest team, and I think head-to-head they have the record over the Falcons and the Saints.
All right, yeah.
But then again, every season we write off the Saints and they make the playoffs. So what do I know about the sport? Next up, Carolina Panthers. They're getting the first draft pick next season, but they gave that pick to the Chicago Bears. So congratulations, Chicago Bears. You get the first pick next year. You can decide if you want a QB or not.
Yeah. Lucky Bears. having that
lucky
wonderful choice.
Bears, and they probably have their own pick, which is also going to be quite high because
Yes.
they're not a good team.
Yeah.
So they're so that looks like basically the playoff picture. The NFC South, basically no one cares, but probably the Buccaneers are going to get through. NFC North, Lions look good, and every team, but even the Bears look kind of good. But every team looks like they could. Those teams look like they could get through. NFC West, 49ers. Like I said, I think they're the best team in the league. But Rams, Seahawks are at the moment one of those mediocre teams. Cowboys, Eagles are probably the only two teams that are going to make it from the NFC East. I know I talked a bit up about Tommy DeVito, but that's just because he's got a great story. I don't see the Giants making the playoffs.
It would have
to be unlikely.
Have to be a great end run for the Giants to make it, I would say.
They would have to do what the Bills are doing right now, and they're not as good as the Bills. And I talked up Tommy DeVito. He's no Josh Allen.
Yeah. And a look ahead sees that the Giants have got to play the Eagles twice in the last 4 weeks, so plus the Saints and the Rams. So I think that sort of might suggest that they're not going to make it. You say that may, as we said, Saints seem to make it somehow.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Saints actually probably have the best run for making it. Giants, Rams, Buccaneers, Falcons. Like, if you need to be playing someone to make playoffs, those are their contenders.
Every team they need to beat to get their way into the playoffs. So pretty much.
It's like, here you go, Saints. It's all in your hands.
Pretty much. And I think that's all you can ask for at the end of the day. Like this point of the season, you're not relying on others. So now moving on to the AFC, which, as I mentioned, is a much stronger division. In the AFC East, we have the Miami Dolphins on the top of the leaderboard. One of the best offenses in the league. They dropped a 70-burger on the Denver Broncos, and as we look down below, the Denver Broncos might make the playoffs, so they potentially dropped 70 points on a playoff team.
Yeah.
Tua Tagovailoa is playing really, really well. Once again, MVP caliber player. Tyreek Hill, potentially also another MVP caliber season, and he's a wide receiver. He is close to potential. There's potential that he will get 2,000 receiving yards this season.
Wow, yeah.
Just to show you how dominant he's been. The Dolphins, though, are in their division have not got the best record. They've lost, I believe, to both the Bills and the Jets, and even to the Patriots, who are way at the bottom and are one of the worst season Bill Belichick has ever had in his career. It's a bit different when you don't have Tom Brady, huh, Bill? Maybe you should have been nicer to him. Maybe. And he would have retired with you and gotten you another Super Bowl. Like, be nice to your superstar who's like humble and doesn't complain, and like does what you say for 20 years, and like you know.
That seems like good advice, really. That person that's been the backbone to your success. Yeah, maybe just don't try to claim all the credit off them.
Yeah.
Just share the credit.
Exactly. Now, the next two teams on this, obviously the Patriots are really bad. The next two teams for the AFC. Now, the Jets really shouldn't be. Literally 5 minutes after they're literally 4 snaps in.
Yeah.
The Aaron Rodgers got an Achilles injury, Achilles injury, which is way worse. So ruled him out for the end of the season, though he is saying that modern medicine will get him back in time for the playoffs. He's Aaron Rodgers. He says weird shit all the time. We should just ignore him because, we know physics is a thing and Achilles don't heal.
Yeah.
Though he did do a run, and he did... they showed him in practice throwing ridiculous bombs on his back leg, so something's happening.
Yeah.
Now, the Bills have had a very mixed season. There's a lot of drama in the team. They're your team, obviously. Sean McDermott is probably on the hot seat at the moment because everybody's saying he's wasting Josh Allen's peak as a player. Obviously, Josh Allen has been carrying this team on his back as much as he could. But, unfortunately, the way Josh Allen plays, it means that when he's carrying you on your back, there's a lot of turnovers as well. So he has been responsible for some of those losses. The Bills, but in the last few weeks, they've been playing much better, looking a bit more like the Bills of the old. They're 7-6. I had written them off from making the playoffs a few weeks ago, but they might prove me wrong. They might show me what I know.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes. I'm sure you think they're going to make the playoffs.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the only thing I can sort of see with it is that...
they've got a great game against the Cowboys tomorrow.
Yeah,
if they win, that's a legit show of we're a force to be reckoned with. Don't write us off.
Then they've
got... after that, they've got a game against the Chargers, who are very bad.
Yeah.
They've got a game against the Patriots, who I mentioned are quite bad. And then on their last week, they have the Dolphins.
Yeah.
So, you want to face against a team that potentially might top your division, or maybe if the Dolphins go on a bit of a losing streak, they might clinch the division off them.
Yeah.
So the Bills, once again, they have a series of games which, if they win, they're going to be, putting everybody in the league on notice. They're a team you don't want to face in the playoffs. However you meet them, definitely don't want to face them. If you're a wild card team that faces the Bills, you're going to be very upset. You're facing one of the best teams in the league.
And it's quite possible the Dolphins will be on a bit of a losing streak, since they've got a reasonably tough run-in with Jets, Cowboys, Ravens, and then the Bills, obviously. So, I mean, I'm picking one of those two run-ins. I'm taking the Bills one all day.
They could probably beat the Jets. Ravens are tough. Bills are tough.
Yeah.
Ravens might be the best team in the league. The next up, we'll get to them. Next up, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, who are 8-5. They did infamously lose their first game to the Detroit Lions. Patrick Mahomes has actually played really well. That's why they have 8 wins. They've had ridiculous amount of drops and bad plays by offensive players. So he's not been able to push them through, but this is what the Chiefs do, right? They look a bit weak in the regular season, and once the playoffs start, things change. Patrick Mahomes just takes it up another gear, and everybody else raises their game. So I wouldn't be too worried if I were a Chiefs fan. I think the Chiefs are going to eventually make it. Looking at their run-in of games, they've got the Patriots. That's probably a gimme. They should win that. They've got a game against the Raiders. That's going to be an interesting game. It's a divisional game. You can never tell what's going to happen. And the Raiders have been, doing interesting things because, they're the Raiders. And then their last game is against the Chargers. So 2 divisional games to end their season. But, that should probably cement it for them because the Raiders and the Chargers are at the bottom of the division.
Yeah.
This is what it tells you. Chargers are bottom of the AFC West, and that would be good enough to get a that would be good enough to put them in the playoff picture in the NFC.
Yeah.
But Justin Herbert's injured, so I think that's it for them. They're not going to get through. The Denver Broncos, as I said, at one point in the season they were 0-3. They they conceded 70 points to the Miami Dolphins. Now, just to give you an idea of how bad that is, the Dolphins intentionally kicked 73 points. The Dolphins intentionally kicked a field goal rather than score a touchdown from a play so that they wouldn't break the all-time record because their coach used to be a ball boy for the Broncos.
Right.
When he was a kid.
Yeah.
and he didn't want to do that. So it was a pity that thing that they didn't concede the most number of points ever. And 70 points, that was 70 touchdowns. Let me be very clear. There were no other field goals.
No.
It was all touchdowns. And at 50 points, their starter went into the bench. So another 20 points were thrown by their backup.
Right, yeah. That's just crazy.
Like, it was very bad. Like, we were watching that game in America. I was in America, in Chicago, and me and my cousins and my brother-in-law were watching that game going like, wow, this is bad. Then we were like, now, their coach, Sean Payton, is won the Super Bowl with the Saints famously in 2010 and, helped revive the city, which was dying from Hurricane Katrina and a bunch of, he's a legend of the game. He's a future Hall of Famer. He took a sabbatical a couple of seasons ago and he came back for a change of scenery to the Broncos. He's got a potential future Hall of Fame quarterback with Russell Wilson there, another Super Bowl winner. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they can do. It's 7-7. Their run of games is, and they have to play the. Let me just quickly look. The Broncos just lost their last game to the Lions, which is a tough one. So they've only got 2 more games left. They've got a game. They've got a game against the
got the Patriots.
The Patriots and the
Chargers.
And the Chargers. So
and then the
2
Raiders.
very winnable games. Yeah, and the Raiders. So there's 3 very potentially winnable games for them.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that plays out for.
And those last 2 games that's the same division, right? So that.
Yeah.
And that's the 2 below them. The Raiders and Chargers are currently below them.
And
some way different.
And they've got the Raiders just threw 68 points on the Chargers. Now, what the Raiders did is arguably even more. What the Chargers did is even worse than what the Broncos did potentially, even though they conceded less points, because the Raiders started a rookie QB who scored 0 points the week before.
Oh, wow.
A big goose egg.
Yeah.
Which is it's really hard in an NFL game not to score any points.
Yeah. That's actually a good. The game before, Raiders versus Vikings. Vikings win it 3-0, which must be one of the
worst games ever.
Worst games ever. It's like.
Yeah. Worst games of any sport you'll ever watch ever. I don't care. I don't mean football. I mean anything.
I sort of want to go watch it, but just looking like yards, passing yards, 183 for the Raiders, and they won. 171 for Las Vegas for the Raiders. For Aiden O'Connell, 171, and 83 for the Vikings. Like, ooh, that's 34 yards rushing, 53 yards receiving. These are the top things. That's clearly not a good game.
No. And then they went to put a 60 burger on the Chargers, almost a 70 burger. But once again, I think it's too little too late. The Raiders had a bad coaching situation at the beginning of the season. They took way too long to fire their coach. And look, the replacement coach has managed to get 6 wins for them. And everybody was telling the Raiders, they got Josh McDaniel, who was Tom Brady's offensive coordinator at New England for years. Now, Josh McDaniel has a really bad history as a head coach. He was terrible for the Broncos. He was terrible he got hired by the Colts and then backed out. And then now he's been terrible at the Las Vegas Raiders, where they kind of let him do whatever he wanted. He was also basically the GM.
Right.
And he brought in a bunch of expatriate players, and not surprisingly, they lost and played terribly. it's almost as though some average or mediocre expatriate players were only good because Tom Brady was throwing to them.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about Rob Gronkowski, who's obviously a future Hall of Famer, or Julian Edelman, who's like a Patriots great, but as a rule.
Yeah. There was a whole lot other of them that looked pretty good, but that's because they had the best quarterback throwing at them, which sort of helps. If you've got someone that good running the team, running the offense, and being able to throw so accurately and so far and so well, you're going to look good. It's hard to look bad in that sort of setup.
Yeah. And then so the AFC West, I do think they're going to make... Obviously, the Chiefs are going to get through.
Yep.
I think the Broncos, because they have 7-7, might potentially get through to... are a team you can look at potentially, but I don't think any team from any other division other than our next division is going to get a wild card spot. We have the AFC North. That 7-7, that's good enough to be second in the AFC West, gets you last place.
Yeah.
If you're in the AFC North.
This is a crazy division.
The AFC North have been playing the NFC West this season, and this is how good they are. They have swept the NFC West until so far. The Ravens are going to play the 49ers. The Browns, the Bengals, and Steelers, apart from the Steelers, the Browns and Bengals all beat the 49ers. 3 of their losses, those 3 losses, 2 of them are against the AFC North teams. That's how good these average level AFC North teams are. They go in and smash the best team in the NFC.
That's, crazy.
So the flip side of this is none of these 3 teams have their starting quarterback, other than the Ravens, who have Lamar Jackson, who is, once again, playing like an MVP. Yeah. Maybe a second MVP for our number 8. And the Ravens have been really good. I've watched 3 of the games they lost. All of them were very, very close. The 3 losses were games they really should have won. They seem to have fixed a lot of those issues. They've been on a 3-game winning streak, and quite an impressive winning streak as well, but beating a bunch of really, really good teams. They have a very, very interesting run of games coming in. They play the Jaguars this week, maybe a game that'll decide who is the top seed for the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
Then they play the... who do they have next? The Ravens have the 49ers after that, which is probably going to be the game of the season. And also stylistically, potentially a game of the season. Like, we want to see what the 49ers do. I will point out that Lamar Jackson is 16-1 against NFC teams.
Wow.
As in, when he plays the NFC, he is unstoppable.
Yeah.
Because they don't watch him, they don't see what he does all the time, and, he just surprises them.
Yeah.
And then they finish off with a game against the Dolphins, another game that could potentially decide seedings in other... for the finale. So there's 3 very tough games for them to play. Obviously, if they win all 3 of those, they should be considered the favorites going into the playoffs, because they will have a home run coming in, and potentially Super Bowl favorites as well, because if they make it to the Super Bowl, they'll play an NFC team, which Lamar Jackson eats them for breakfast.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, they've had a few injury problems. Their safety, Kyle Hamilton, who is a beast, is injured, and Lamar Jackson's favorite target, Mark Andrews, got injured.
Oh, no.
Ironically, that's been good for Lamar, because he's been forced to spread the love, use as many of his receivers as possible, and the backup tight end has also come up. So, the Ravens look really, really good. And they have a really, really good coach. So I think they will probably top the AFC North, and obviously they're going to top... I think they're also going to top the conference. They're going to get the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Cleveland Browns, 8-5.
Wow.
Playing incredible they are their quarterback. Deshaun Watson got injured. And is out for the season, but they managed to get an old face, Joe Flacco, the man who won the 2012 Super Bowl with the Ravens and was Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
He's now playing at the Browns, and he's playing pretty good. So the Browns with Flacco, it'd be quite ironic if Browns were to face the Ravens in the playoffs with Flacco.
Yeah.
So they're one of the teams that are which are in the driver's seat to get one of those wildcard spots at 8-5. At 8-6, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, the current 6th seed. The Bengals, unfortunately, Joe Burrow got injured and out for the season again, but they managed to find a rookie quarterback who's incredible, who they drafted as a backup this season. Jake Browning has played amazing.
Yeah.
Obviously, he has a really, really good team around him. You start off. The Bengals had maybe the best receiving core in the league, with players like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and AJ Brown. So they, basically, so far, Jake Browning has done basically just sat there going like, don't throw the ball over and try and score as many, just do what Joe would do, I guess.
Yeah.
He did 324 receiving yards, even though 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. They've got Jamar Chase, obviously T. Higgins, and Tyler Boyd. So 3 top tier. Basically, Tyler Boyd, who's number 3 for the Bengals receivers, would probably be a number 1 in a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Like, that's how good they are. And obviously Jamar Chase is an absolute beast.
Yeah.
Those guys are so the Bengals managed a sneaky overtime win today against the Vikings. So their schedule going forward, they've got to play the Steelers, and then they have to play the Chiefs, a team they have a pretty good record against. And then they're playing the Battle of Ohio against the Browns.
Yeah.
Now, potentially this might be the reason why the NFC North doesn't get 4 teams, because their teams are going to just beat each other up.
Yeah.
Ridiculously. And when I say beat each other up, a bunch of the injuries to these quarterbacks happened in interdivision games.
Yeah.
So they've literally, both figuratively and literally, been beating each other up. But those two, and now we've got to our third team, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, my hypothesis for 4 AFC North teams to make the playoffs comes to shaky ground here. They're 7-7. Obviously, they have a very tough game next week against the Bengals. They play this week. They play against the they play the Colts today and lost. So unfortunately, I think that might be what ends up losing them their spot in the.
That puts them in 3 losses in a row. Probably not.
Yeah.
Sort of thing you need at the end of the season.
Yeah, and their QB Kenny Pickett has been injured for a while, so they've had a tough time getting any wins of the. But Mike Tomlin, their coach, has never had a losing season, so we'll see what happens. Next up, we have the second best division in the potentially in this conference, the AFC South. The Jacksonville Jaguars, currently at 8-5, and right up behind them, 8-6, is the Indianapolis Colts. And not far behind is the 7-6 Houston Texans. I do believe, even though the Titans are not out of the picture, I do not think they can make a wild card spot.
They are playing the Texans tomorrow, I think it is. So
yeah.
Potentially that might just be pushing both. If the Titans win, is that for the Titans? If they win, that may just be damaging both of them. Really, and that would be 6-8 and 7-8. So. No, 7-7. Sorry, and 6-8. So.
And it's a good week for the Colts, because if, for example, the Titans were to beat the Texans and the Ravens beat the Jaguars, they go top of this division.
Yeah.
Colts are also with a backup QB at the moment, a reoccurring theme. They had drafted a rookie, Anthony Richardson, who was balling out when he played, but he unfortunately got injured, and they had Gardner Minshew as his backup. Gardner Minshew might be the best backup in the league. I do think he's good enough to be a starter in a bunch of teams. So he has been balling out for the Colts and been getting better as the season has progressed. So I could see him potentially make a good move in the offseason. But I think the Jaguars just have better coaching and better. They have better coaching, and they have currently a better QB with Trevor Lawrence, the blonde bomber.
Yeah.
And next week they have after playing the Ravens, which, let's just say they lose this game, then they've got the Buccaneers, so that's a Miami derby. But once again, I think the Jaguars are too good. They're just gonna beat the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And then they play the Panthers, who suck.
Yeah.
And who, despite being really, really bad, are going to get nothing for it because they don't have their draft pick. And they are then playing the Titans, who are, once again, they've got the Jaguars have a decent record against the Titans. So the Titans have a decent record against the Jaguars, I should say. So you never know. It's a divisional game, but once again, those are, apart from the Ravens game, if they win the next two, that should probably secure the top of the table. I do think they have the head-to-head against the Colts. The Colts are playing the Texans. They're playing the Raiders, and they're playing the Falcons. So they're potentially 3 winnable games for them as well. So this AFC South could go to the wire. Because of the way the Colts games have popped out, I do think the Jaguars, even with 2 games, like 10 wins should be enough to make a playoff spot, whether it's a wild card or topping the division. And the same deal with the Colts. I think if they could even win out from here, because they're all winnable games for them, and they might top the division. The Houston Texans, very unlucky to hit all their injuries when they did. They also drafted a rookie QB. They had the 2nd overall pick. CJ Stroud has had an incredible season. He's going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year. He might even get some MVP votes. Very, very promising team. Next season, they're going to ball. They're going to be really, really good, I think. The Texans are back. And the AFC South are going to be a very tough division, because even the Titans are not bad. And the Titans had an injured QB situation, and their backup, who they drafted this year, has been doing okay. Drafted in the 3rd round, and he's potentially might just ball. He might end up being a pretty good player for them. So this is the thing. I think this is AFC South because they have an easier schedule. I think they're just gonna have two teams from this, and 3 teams from the AFC North. I don't know how, because I think the Broncos and the Raiders are just gonna lose too many games leading up.
Yeah.
This is where I think the Bills and Dolphins have a problem. The Bills could catch up to the Dolphins. The Dolphins might lose every game for the rest of the season. Like there's 4 more games to go. There's a decent chance that the Bills will catch up to them. They have so many tough games to play.
I think tomorrow, sort of thoughts that AFC East. There's 2 big games tomorrow. The Bills playing the Cowboys, and Dolphins playing the Jets. The divisional.
If the Dolphins cannot beat the Jets, they're not making the playoffs.
Yeah, I think both those games are critical for both those teams making playoffs. Like Bills are going to beat Cowboys. Get that. They possibly can still make it. Otherwise,
I believe the Bills have a losing record to their division, though. Just the other bad side for them.
Yeah.
Because they lost to the Jets infamously.
Yeah.
Again, an Aaron Rodgers game, and the Jets came back and won again.
Yeah.
And then I believe the Dolphins have beaten them twice as well.
Bills did beat the Jets the second time round, but I think the Dolphins. Oh no, Bills beat the Dolphins once.
Yeah.
They lost to the.
It's a 1-1.
Yeah, 1-1.
Lost to the Jets. Yeah.
They
so the Dolphins.
They lost. I think they won 1 all the way down, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've lost to the Patriots, so they have to beat the Patriots.
Yeah, like losing to the Patriots is the real thing. This is what makes me worried about with the Bills and because I think both the Bills and Dolphins have lost to the Patriots, and you're like, why would you lose to such a bad team?
Yeah.
But then again, the Patriots have a good defense, so that can happen. Unfortunately, like I said, the Dolphins schedule, if we have a quick gander at it, they played the Jets. Once again, it's a game they must win, but I think if they win that game against the Jets, that gets them 10 wins. That should be potentially might be enough to get them to the playoffs. Because if the Bills don't beat the Dallas Cowboys and they beat the Jets, I think that sets it. Like the Bills probably won't make the playoffs, and the Dolphins are gonna get through. Because that'll be a 3 games behind with 3 games to go. Unlikely.
Bills might still sneak the wild card at that point, but I would say unlikely to top the division. So they have to win the last 3, which get them to 10 wins at that point.
Yeah.
They got 4 games left, so they can lose 1, win 3, and they at least get to 10 games, and then it's maybe
there's a situation where we've got the Browns, Bengals, Bills, and a AFC South team who is not topping with 10 points. That's how strong the AFC is.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you have a 10-win team as a 10-win team that didn't take out the division in potentially 3 of the divisions, and one of them might not make the playoffs because once again we might still get the Browns and the Bengals make the playoffs. And so just looking at the games coming up for tomorrow, like our time, it'll be tomorrow.
Yeah.
Maybe by the time you've read this, you'll already know the result, or listen to this, you've already know the results. We've got the Browns playing the Bears, which should be a win for them.
Yeah.
At home, Saints playing the Giants. Once again, I think the Saints should win that. Panthers, Falcons. Obviously, Falcons are going to win that. Packers, Buccaneers. We'll see. This is where the Buccaneers show if they're a playoff team or not.
Yeah.
Packers have to try and get that wild card. Dolphins, Jets, as we mentioned, they need to win this game just to show that they are what they are. Patriots, Chiefs should win that, no problems.
Yeah.
Titans, Texans, once again, Texans need to win because they're still technically in the playoff picture.
Yeah.
The Titans at home might pull off an upset. Cardinals play the 49ers. It is an in-division game. The Cardinals beat the 49ers. The Cardinals have beaten a bunch of good teams with Kyler Murray. So we'll see if they do that to the 49ers. Then we've got the Rams versus Commanders, which I think the Rams are going to win. Yeah. Bills versus Cowboys. So tough. But it might be a callback to the 90s and the Cowboys beat them. Do you remember 4 seasons in a row the Bills made the playoffs and then they lost? Made the Super Bowl and lost, and they lost to the Dallas Cowboys twice in that run.
Good times.
Good times indeed. Then we have the Jaguars versus the Ravens. It's at Duval County in Jacksonville. But I do think the Ravens have shown they're just a bit better than the Jaguars are. I think they're going to win. They're going to beat the Jaguars. Seahawks versus Eagles. This is where I think the Eagles, they've lost their last, I think they've lost 2 of their last 3 games. This is where they need to come back and show that they're one of the teams that are going to compete for the Super Bowl. Yeah. Also, they're the only team in the NFL that uses a rugby mall. So, you know.
Go the Eagles. Prove that's better somehow.
Yeah. So I think they'll... and so if that plays out the way I think, it'll basically cement how it goes. Because I think there's just enough wins for 2 teams in the AFC North to get 10... 3 teams in the AFC North to get more than 10 wins, because I think the Browns can beat the Bears, and the Bengals have already beaten the Vikings today, and I think Ravens are going to beat the Jaguars.
I think the only problem there is that I think the Browns or the Bengals are going to play both the other 2.
Yeah, they play each other. They play each other in the last game of the year. Yeah. So the Bengals play the Steelers next week, which I think they can win, even though it's at Pittsburgh. And then Texans host the Browns, which again, I think the Browns can win that with Flacco. If the Ravens beat the 49ers, they are the best team in the league, no question. Then the Browns play the Jets. Once again, winnable game because the Jets are a team without an offense. The Bengals play the Chiefs. That's a tough one, obviously. But once again, the Bengals have a decent record against the Chiefs. Yeah. And they have beaten the Chiefs in a playoff game at Arrowhead Stadium, famously. Yeah. To make it to the Super Bowl, so very doable. Last week of the year, Ravens play the Steelers. I think the Ravens might even rest all their starters for that game, depending on how it looks. And then we've got Bengals versus Browns. So, you know, the Bengals and Browns can easily get 2 more wins, and one of them might get 3 because they play each other last week. So, you know, you might end up with an AFC North that has something like a team with 13 wins, 11 wins, and 10 wins. Yeah. Like an incredibly strong division.
That is incredible.
And the Steelers are not bad. 7 wins if they lose all the rest of their games. 7 wins is still almost good enough to potentially. So that's the situation there. But I think it's been a really ridiculous season. The NFL's been going through what the Premiership's been going through, where since 2020, no season's been regular. Every season has had something different about it, or unusual, and we had to work our modeling around it. So yeah, I think it's gonna be very, very interesting leading up to it. I cannot wait. Then we're gonna have the playoffs in January, which will be obviously incredible. Yeah. Definitely looking forward to it.
Very good. No, looking forward to it, definitely. Say playoffs, the NFL is always fun.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of games on during like time off for us. Like maybe games in Christmas morning, and there's going to be games in Boxing Day. But it's very, very accessible. And also games the week after that are games in leading up to New Year's.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, should be very, very watchable for people. It's only the last week, which is when everybody's coming back to work.
Yeah, it's only those of us, Orsods, that are working the week of the 8th that problematic there. There's some people that would still be off, so they'll be able to relax with the last week of NFL games.
Yeah, and they have shifted it back. The Super Bowl is on the 12th of February this year, so it'll be so it's all leading up to that. We can't wait, but I think that's all we have time for today.
Yep.
Thanks very much for listening, and look forward to hearing from you next time.
Catch you next time.
Well, that is the end. Thanks for listening all the way through.
If you liked what you heard, we have even more. NineSixFourTwo Discord and a Buy Me a Coffee.
Pretty sure it's Buy Me a Beer.
Oh yeah, buy me a beer on buymeacoffee.com.
In both these places, you can talk to us, and we may even listen, especially if you do buy a said beer or coffee. I might still be confused.
Yes, we're easily bribed. All links are in the show notes below.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
This is on YouTube.